Post-World War II, Australia was a young nation ready to distance oneself from historicism and progress as a country through a new way of living, allowing modernism to emerge. This film's focus is on how Australian architects adopt international modernist design principles and evolve them into a new way of living for Australians. Specifically Robin Boyd, a modernist pioneer, an architect at the time who was pushing for an Australian modernism and who is arguably considered Australia's most influential architect, whose work continues to influence contemporary designers. Boyd believed the house should be primarily functional. Designs such as the Walsh Street House and the Featherston House, Boyd embraced a new style with new materials, technologies and overall good design. Boyd's innovation and passion for Australia's architectural identity continues to inspire contemporary architects today. Modern architect Glenn Murcutt will be discussed regarding Boyd's influence during present times. Murcutt's work in the Marie Short and Donaldson houses shows similar principles and ideas as Boyd. Boyd was born in Melbourne on January 3, 1919, into a creative family of sculptors and painters. However, he is the only architect within the family. Boyd studied at the Melbourne Technical College and University of Melbourne after high school. As a student between 1947 and 1956, he had an editorship for The Age, architectural magazines Smudges and Lines. From 1947 to 1953, he was the first director of the Royal Victorian Institute of Architects' Small Home Services, where he wrote weekly newspaper columns on his optimism for the future of Australian architecture, influencing the public in what he considered good and bad design was. Not only did Boyd connect with and drive Australians with his passion of design, he was also noted as an international architecture critic, writing 2 books on Japanese architecture and many articles for international professional journals. Boyd was also a lecturer at the University of Melbourne for several years and a regular broadcaster on radio and television, where he continued to have an impact on design development through teaching. Boyd unfortunately passed away unexpectedly at age 52. Post-World War II, we see a reconstruction boom. Times were changing and people were wanting to move on. The home became a symbol of a better world and a place that rejected the past. The government were the main force behind this reconstruction boom, as they promised returning soldiers homes and pushed for new buildings, specifically modern homes. This benefited the economy due to more job opportunities from construction, and new materials were being manufactured and purchased. During Boyd's time as Director for Small Home Services, architecture became available to everyone for the first time, once viewed as only for the upper class. Modern housing blueprints were available for £5 a plan. Quote, from 1947 to late 1970s, small home services were built across Melbourne, and it's estimated that up to 5,000 homes were built, possibly 15% of all homes constructed in the state at the time, end quote. Steed 2018. These homes consisted of open living, true to form and materials, with a real focus on space, which are now distinctive mid-century modern style elements. Boyd's display home, House of Tomorrow, built for the Melbourne Exhibition 1949, was an example of modern homes for the public to view and see how one can live within. The aim was to change Australia's current way of thinking and branch out to the new good design principles being promoted. This home embraced post-World War II modern principles through its form follows function, truth to materials and open planning. The most striking feature is the large glass windows. Boyd was known for being a critic to all architecture. He was driven to promote, inspire and provoke an awareness of good design, but also wasn't afraid of calling out bad design. This shows his passion and drive towards Australia's modernism architecture improvement. Boyd believed the principles for good design was stripped back from elegance, comfort within everyday use, quality and clarity form, and bad design expressed the past was hard to clean and very mismatched. In earlier days working for Smudges, he would announce the best building bouquet of the month and blot of the month, what he believed the worst. Boyd also wrote a book, Australian Ugliness, where he criticised the normal Australian houses Again, not afraid of making people reconsider the normal and progress with new architectural possibilities. The Welsh Street and Featherstone houses epitomise Boyd's modernist principles and show the development of modernism in Australia. The Welsh Street house is one of Boyd's most well-known works, being one of the first modern homes to have been seen in Australia. It was built in 1957 for his family. Its uniqueness embodies his structural, functional, architectural, good design principles he wanted to promote in modern housing, as well as a key focus on function and ease for his family's lifestyle. The focus on space and volume allowed Boyd to create an extremely unconventional style with a communal living space and informal bedroom combined. This flexibility of space allowed for diversity and maximal of space when hosting dinner parties due to less restriction. The layout of the house was centred around a gorgeous courtyard which could be enjoyed from all living areas. The divide the courtyard created between children's end of the house and parents' living end of the house gives a sense of privacy whilst being open plan living. This home was flowing, spatial awareness and incorporates inventive use of materials, designs and built-in furniture for the time period. The Welsh Street house still stands today and remains an iconic house in Melbourne. The Featherstone house is another well-known early modernism house of Boyd's that embodies modernist principles and Australian identity. The modernist house with the connection to Australia's landscape was built for partners Grant and Eric Featherstone in 1967. Boyd's focus was on space and bringing nature indoors, both physically with an inside garden and pond, and with the use of modern techniques and materials. Large floor-to-ceiling glass windows and roof allowed the outer landscape to be viewed. The main principles and elements Boyd has incorporated within this space is spatial continuity, honest truth to materials and form through exposed brick and wood, as well as form follows function with open plan living space and platforms that are adaptable and interlinked to accommodate a wide variety of domestic and professional settings. Glenn Murcott, an Australian contemporary architect, is known for designing innovative climate-sensitive private houses. His buildings reflect his desire to maintain harmony with the environment and focus on simplistic modern design similar to Boyd. Murcott was born in London 1936 during his parents' world tour and lived part of his childhood in New Guinea. This is where Murcott's appreciation for simple, primitive, vernacular architecture evolved. Murcott graduated in 1961 from University of New South Wales Technical College with a degree in architecture. He then worked for 8 years within a Sydney architectural firm before founding his own practice, which was around the time Boyd's influence on Australia's architecture was blooming. He became a largely influential architecture, internationally admired for his work within Australia, and is a highly regarded teacher, critic and lecturer around the world. We see similar parallels to Boyd's architecture principles and ideas in Murcott's designs, specifically their awareness of landscape environments, truth to materials and focus on space through open plan living. Murcott's designs are specifically environmentally sensitive, with most not requiring air conditioning, as he studies the surrounding environment and works with natural heating, paying attention to the seasons and the sun, before designing the building to harmonise with the movement of wind and light. Whilst Murcott is known and praised for his environmentally friendly designs, Boyd's homes, quote, utilise environmentally sustainable development 40 years before the term was even coined, end quote, Police Code 2007, working with the natural landscape as best as he could rather than carelessly destroying. One of Murcott's most influential designs is the Mari Short House, where the outer layer of the house is made out of louvers, blinds and flywire, and from a distance looks like any other agricultural building. Murcott's design is low and long, which helps it become part of the natural environment, like Boyd, who worked with the nature's beauty instead of taking from the environment. As described in Architecture Australia Volume 93, Issue 6, quote, occupants can manually control the interior environment like a highly tuned musical instrument. It allows an engagement with every aspect of the environment in a most joyous and celebratory way, end quote. Murcott's design consists of two single-level pavilions sitting alongside each other, one for living and the other for sleeping. This approach is like Boyd's Walsh Street house, with awareness of space and volume to create privacy and modernist functionality. Similar to Boyd, construction remains simple and use of timber remains true to form. The Donaldson House also embraces the landscape. Sited on a steeply sloping 715 square metre block in Palm Beach, the house is surrounded by native bushes and trees over 100 years old. In saying that, quote, "It was of considerable importance that in designing this house as many trees as possible should remain," end quote, Murcott 2017. We see Murcott's conscious effort in respecting nature and working with it, specifically in this house being built angled, windows are meaningfully projected outwards in places where shrubbery surrounds the house to protect and frame the best views. The modernist principles expressed in this design specifically is simplicity, being a white palette, open plan living with large open windows floor to ceiling, allowing as much natural light in, as well as a connection with surrounding nature. Truth to materials is also evident with exposed brick and hoop pine ceilings. Murcott's style in all his designs have a harmonious blend of modernist principles and functionality, local craftsmanship and respect for nature with a distinct Australian character. Boyd and Murcott were both extremely influential in their rise of modernism. Boyd, pioneering modernism throughout his career, has lasting effects on Australia, specifically contemporary architects like Glenn Murcott, who continue to learn from the modernism development and knowledge in place from Boyd and expand on it with their own knowledge, inspiring the modern world we live in today.